Is Larry King live from New Jersey.
Larry King.
We have an interview here with Edith B. Ekman, no longer a gray panther, now a snow leopard. All right. Now, you were born on March 20th in 1913, the eldest of 8 children in Woodbury, New Jersey. Now, who were your oldest living relatives that you could remember from that time?
I remember both Grandmom and Grandpa Bud. And then my grandmother Smalley, my mother's mother. My grandfather and grandfather lived in a house on Hessian Avenue, and my Uncle Charlie, my Uncle Frank, and my father lived in houses north of it.
Mm-hmm.
And they were the ones I remember most.
Mm-hmm. Now, around what year were the oldest ones born?
Well, I'd check it. I decided that they were born around 1870.
Around 1870?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So what were they like? What were the times like back then?
I was very happy as a child. We had our own little group of kids from my Uncle Charlie's family, my Uncle Frank's family, and my family, and we all ran together. And we went down the street and down to Grandma and Grandpa's house, and they were great people. They always welcomed us to come in and play, and they always had something for us to do. It was a very happy association with them. Mm-hmm. They were great people.
Had they invented money by then?
Yes, I'm sure my grandfather was like with the money.
No. I remember a 1913 penny from your collection, so I'm sure that back then, they had money around. Now, you've had then a running relationship from the 1870s to the year 2003.
Yes.
That's a long time. That gives you quite a perspective. That's longer than Bonanza was on television. In that sense. Now,
that's true.
When did your father obtain the land on Hessian Avenue in Woodbury?
Well, I'm not sure of the exact date that here. My grandfather owned 300 acres of ground, and they had the dairy farm, and the vegetables and fruits and so forth. But when my brother Bob was born in 1920, he was then building and selling houses. Mm-hmm. How much time before that, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, tell us about living on the farm then, because the farm was still active.
Oh, yes.
All right, so tell us about living on the farm.
Oh, it was great. They would have neighbors come in, and they would have a hog kiln, and then they would go to somebody else's house, farm, and they would help them. And we weren't allowed to get too close. We were allowed to sit in a very big wagon and watch, mm-hmm. and laugh. And my Uncle Frank was the one who always did the milking. Mm-hmm. And if we kids got too close, he would just squirt us a little bit of milk.
Chase off that way.
Yeah.
Did you have chores? Did you have responsibilities at that point?
Not really responsibilities every day. But if my grandmother would say to me, "Go get me 6 eggs," then we would go to the hen houses, mm-hmm. and we'd bring in her 6 eggs. Mm-hmm. But they were just very menial things. We didn't have to work at the
mm-hmm.
farm.
Okay. Well, what was your father like?
Very strict. Even before my mother died, he was very strict. He had rules, and you had to obey them, and you didn't dare argue with him. But after my mother died, he was even worse. And one of my stories that I like to tell is that when I was in college, whenever I went out, I didn't date very much in high school, but whenever I had to be home by 12 o'clock. And my junior prom at Temple University, I had to be home at 12 o'clock. The dance didn't start until 10 o'clock, which meant I had to leave at 11 mm-hmm. to be home. I was furious.
So did you break curfew, or were you home by midnight?
I was home. I was home by midnight.
No, it was a short prom.
It sure was.
Yeah.
And for my senior prom, I was living on campus in the dorm. And there I could stay until 2 o'clock when it was over. But we still had to be in 1 hour after prom ended. And we still had to check in. There was a counselor who sat there in those days and made sure we got in. But we did have an hour afterwards.
Now, you took over the household when you were about 12 years old.
Yes.
Your mother had died at that point. Now, you've been raising kids now for 78 years.
That's right.
Amazing, all right? You fed one of your children a bobby pin, I've been told, spilled a cup of coffee, boiling water actually, on another, put somebody's arm through a washing machine wringer, and in a moment of great triumph, you even ran over one of your children with your own car.
Oh, I
Now,
know.
and yet they all survived, all
Yes.
right? Kind of makes you believe in God.
Yes, it sure does.
Now, what have you learned about raising a family in all this time?
I think the best thing I can recommend when you're raising a family, this is all hindsight, is to have a sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
You have to laugh at yourself, you have to make compromises, and just to keep smiling through it all is what I would recommend. I didn't believe that when I was going through it,
Mm-hmm.
but in hindsight, that's what I believe.
Okay, all right. Now, you were born before TV, correct?
I was wondering.
Born before TV.
Oh, yes.
TV wasn't around. Before, actually, radio was barely popular at that
That's
point. Before swearing was allowed, actually. And
That's right. No words at
right.
first.
There was no movies that were, people went out to at that point. There was no computer. Now, what did you do with your time back then?
Well, as I said, this little gang that we had were always together, and we would play in each other's houses. I remember my Aunt Cora had beautiful long hair, and she would let us come over and plait her hair and play with it. And most of the time, if we were home, we did sewing of some kind. We either made quilts, or we knitted Afghans, or we made dresses for our dolls. Mostly handwork.
Was the family very religious at that point?
My dad was not very religious, but my Uncle Frank was, and he was the one who took us to Sunday school and church.
Okay,
He
so
would gather all the gang that went to church. And we went to church in a horse and buggy.
oh, really?
We didn't have any cars in those days.
Right. And what was your favorite hymn?
My favorite hymn in those days, the one I remember now was the one that they sang at my mother's funeral, but I don't know that I had a favorite hymn during a Sunday. Oh, maybe Jesus Loves Me.
Uh-huh. I thought it might be your youngest son, actually, but oh well. Now let's go back to some of your early life. All right, I'm sure that would be interesting for all your family members. Tell us about your first kiss.
My first kiss was one from a boy named Christian Leopold, and he was a member of our commercial club in high school. He was walking me home from school, and I was standing out by the tennis court, and he gave me a quick kiss. And I always remember Christian Leopold.
The first one, right?
Yes.
Now, did you have any children out of wedlock?
Of course not. We didn't even have sex out of wedlock.
Now, you were coming in of age in the 20s. Was flappers part of your life? Was that something that you had any experience with, or was that something that was predated you?
No, it was going on, but we weren't allowed to be a flapper.
Okay.
But in magazines had pictures, and newspapers had pictures of flappers. So I knew there was a flapper era going on with short dresses and long waisted.
Right. But that
We
was
weren't
outside.
allowed to wear that.
It was not part of your experience.
No.
Well, but yet you went to college, and this was a very unusual thing for a woman to go to
That's
college
right.
at that age.
That's
Now, what was it like to be a woman in college in the 30s, late 20s and 30s?
It was neat. The reason why I was allowed to go to college is by this time my father had met this Miss Grace Messick, who was a teacher, and she had encouraged him to let the children go to school, go to college. And I had a choice between Glassboro State College or Temple University, and I chose Temple. And
Temple University. That's a Jewish school, right?
that's right. That's what they call it now. But I had some very, very nice, very close Jewish friends.
Oh.
I learned a lot from them.
Mm-hmm.
I would go to their houses and I would listen to their mother talk about the way they cooked. They had certain pots and pans for one festival.
Mm-hmm.
And the Jewish people have been a large influence in my life.
Mm-hmm. So Grace was actually responsible or had a large role in getting...
That's the school. Yeah, she did.
Did all three of you go to school?
No, because by the time my sister and I went to school, my father had decided we would come home and talk about what the professors had talked about.
Right.
My father would say, college is ruining my girls. I'm not going to let them ruin my son. And he would not let Bob go to school.
I see. So you ruined it for Bob.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's what he would say.
You were talking too much back at home. That's what it was.
Yes.
Now, how did you meet your husband, Len?
Well, we went to school on a bus at the end of our street, at the end of Hessian Avenue. And he had gotten on a bus in Pittman. He was going to Temple University also. He was in the same physical education department as my sister. And we would get on the bus and he would save a seat for Mabel. And one Saturday, when semesters changed, we had Saturday classes. So when the semesters changed and we had Saturday classes, Len asked his father if he could borrow the family car to drive to school on Saturday morning. His father said yes. So he came and picked up my sister, took her to school, left me sitting there, and I got on the bus. So the next Saturday, we got ready to go, and she's got ready and on the bus. I said, aren't you going to wait for Len? She said, no, he didn't ask me this week whether he was going to pick me up or not, so I'm going to go on the bus. So she left on the bus, and I waited, and he came by, and I told him. So he took me to school that Saturday, and from then on, he saved the seat for me on the bus. And my sister always says I stole her boyfriend.
Well, you do have a little smile on a little sly smile on your face there. So what are some of your fondest memories of your husband, Len?
My fondest memories of my husband, Len. Well, I see. I wrote down here. That's right. I guess the most fondest memories that I have of Len were the community activities that he participated in. He had a lot to do with Rotary and with Business Association, and I was part of that as sort of his second, his backup.
Mm-hmm.
That was the most exciting part of his life.
Yeah.
He never had much time. He didn't coach Little League, and he didn't go to a lot of the boys' affairs until they got in college. And then he had to go to everybody's football games. But while they were in high school, he was sort of too busy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, he was starting a business and sort of making that run.
That's right.
In that sense. Now, you've seen a lot of time pass over the course of your life. What would you say is the greatest labor-saving device?
I've thought about that a long time. My first vacuum cleaner.
Okay.
I mean, before that, I must have been dusting and picking up with a broom. I had my first vacuum cleaner. That was my most exciting.
Uh-huh. And a huge difference it makes.
Yes, I mean, and everybody has a vacuum cleaner now
Right.
when I first get, but
Right.
I didn't have one for a long
Right.
time.
Mhm.
I remember that vacuum cleaner.
Now, you also went through the Great Depression.
Yes.
Did it have much of an effect on you in terms of your life?
No, and not as far as my activities went. My dad always seemed to have enough money for us to do whatever. But the Great Depression taught us to save. not only to save money, which we did through school and we did at home, but to save leftovers from dinner and have it the next day for lunch. To save, if I cut out a pattern for a dress, we saved the scraps of material and made those into a quilt. We learned to save. And my biggest profit from the Great Depression.
And to use it all.
Yes.
In that sense. Now, your peers have been called the greatest generation for their sort of pivotal role in protecting the world from tyranny. Tom Brokaw tended to focus on the men of that generation, but we've also seen movies about Norma Ray going to the factory and women given an opportunity to play professional baseball during the war years and things like that. What was the role that women played in that generation from your point of view?
I saw women, excuse me, I saw women go to work. I thought the men could go to war. And I saw them wear slacks or pants for the first time. Always had worn skirts.
Right.
And to see women going along with men's pants on was something different. That was mostly the labor-saving deal. And my sister was so excited about serving, doing something, that she joined the Waves, which was part of the Navy.
Right. So she actually became more active in the service side of it. Now, your generation's changed dramatically during your lifetime. When you were born, people were expected to retire at 55 and live until 65. You started a whole new life at 65, and now have had 25 years since turning 65. Your children are all over 55, and you're still going. Any secrets to your success?
Secrets to my success. I should have thought about that one. I guess, excuse me. One of the joys of my married life was a group of 12 people, which we called the Bridge Club. The kids call them Dizzy Dozen. But this group of people met once a month. We cooked dinner, and we were supposed to play bridge, but the men weren't very cooperative on the bridge. They didn't follow any of the rules. But that group, we never had any...
Sounds like men.
That's right. And we never had any swapping of partners. It was all good, clean fun, and laughing at each other, telling jokes, and but keeping in touch. And it was a high caliber relationship, which now that most of them are gone, I appreciate so much more. I was also a member of another group of my college friends who swapped partners. And I would say, went to this one party, and I said, well, where's Jean? Oh, she's out in the car making out with Lyle. I just couldn't believe that people would do that.
So two very different groups.
Absolutely. And so I just pushed them aside. I didn't go.
Well, when you said this group that you were, the Bridge Club was high caliber, what did you mean?
Their morals were high. They were, some were professional men, some were businessmen, some were golfing partners. They just had high moral standards. They never put their hands on any other wife's body of any. We always kissed each other when we came in, but it was a very clean, upright association, which now I love.
What do you look back on your life with your greatest regret?
Oh. I had 3 children, and I was asked to substitute teaching at Clayton High School. And in my department, my commercial ed. And I taught for 6 weeks, and the lady was very ill, and she died. And they asked me to come and full-time in the fall. I was thrilled to death. A nice job close by in my field. My father heard about it, and he wrote me a stinging letter telling me, I was going to bring it with me, but I forgot, that I should have thought a long time before I had brought 3 lovely children into the world. I wanted to go back to work. And my husband agreed with him. And I couldn't stand up against these 2 men.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish that I had, somehow convinced them that I should have done it, because I had a friend, Dorothy Eddy, who had 2 children. Judy was Lynn's age, and then she had this little boy who was cerebral palsy. And they put him in school in what do they call it, special ed.
Right.
And the teacher said to Dorothy, this boy has a brain. He should not be in this class. He should be educated.
Right.
So she went back to school in order to afford to send him to the Martin School in Philadelphia. And he is a success. He's now your age, and he has retired from as a dishwasher at the University of Wyoming. And
I may be retiring to be a dishwasher at some point.
well, he did that for 18 years. And he is, and Dorothy had so many more friends, more social life, more experiences on the playground. Her life was so much richer from having gone back to teaching,
Mm-hmm.
which I felt mine would have been if I had been.
Right.
If I had
So you approve of working women
I sure did.
with children,
Yes,
with a
I
family,
did.
in that sense.
I mean, provide the children are well taken care
Yeah.
of.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a maiden lady who was come in when the kids came home from school, and was there until I came home. And she was very, very good with the kids.
Of course, if you'd gone back to work after 3 kids, I might not be here interviewing you today. But
That's right.
what do you perceive as your greatest success or satisfaction in life?
A tremendous change in my attitude. I was sitting next to a man at one of Lynn's banquets or some kind of an affair, Les Trevan. And I said to him, just as a casual thing, so what's going on in your life, Les? He told me about this EST course that he was taking, and he was so enthusiastic about it. It was incredible, he said. I said, it sounds like something I might like to do. He said, make arrangements, I'll pick you up. And it was that time, it was 2 weekends, all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and late at night. But Les picked me up, took me to the program, brought me home. And the S program taught me that my success and my happiness was not due to anybody else, only myself. Mm-hmm. And it gave me I had been living in the shadow of a husband, living in the shadow of a father. And it gave me a new perspective that I hadn't had before. That was my greatest satisfaction, mm-hmm. that I could change my life and could do something to make me successful and me happy.
And so those 25 years since 65 have been much about that.
That's right, absolutely.
In fact. Mm-hmm. Now you also have friends who are here today. Dean Witchell, Sis Camel are both here. You've been friends for how long?
I think about 60 years.
60 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did you ever realize what it is that allowed the 3 of you to remain friends for so many years?
Well, they were part of this same group that I'm talking about. This,
the Bridge Club.
The Bridge Club. and whenever we have a problem with our children or a problem with the heater, as I'm having today, that's who I would call, mm-hmm. one of those women in that group. And well, what did you do? What did you do? And we just became so involved in each other's lives that it was easy to become good friends, mm-hmm. and feel comfortable with it.
Mm-hmm. Now, we know you have strong points of view with respect to many things, such as prescription drugs for seniors or former President Clinton. The list goes on. And one of the tragedies of getting older is that you don't get to talk to everyone as often as you would like. Is there anything you wish to say to the audience as a way of ending this interview?
Yes, I wrote some things down here. I can just find them. The first thing I would say is that I would follow the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have others to do unto you. And where's my list?
So the golden rule still is applicable today.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Do unto others as you would have others to do unto you. And I typed this over, but I didn't do a very good job. And start each day with a prayer of thanksgiving for the night that is past and asking for guidance for the day coming. And if you find yourself on the wrong way, on a narrow road, don't hesitate to change direction and do something different with your life. And I think that's the most important thing I can tell.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thank you for the life you have given us, both literally and figuratively. And now everyone in the crowd is going to join me in singing to you a happy birthday. All right? So we're going to all join in at this point.
Okay.